What's going on, guys? Texas Platinum is back with another video this week. That makes two. We got a bit of a fun off-season type video. You know, we're starting to enter that territory right now. Signing day 2 is kind of coming up in a little bit, and obviously the transfer portal right now is on fire, but that still leaves us a little bit of time with the college football season now being officially over to talk a little bit of, different college football topics, especially pertaining to the Texas Longhorns. And Matt Myers and I, obviously, if you've watched our videos in the past, we care a lot about college football uniforms. It's one of the joys of the sport is watching, the players in the uniforms, and especially being hardcore Texas fans, we care very much about the Texas Longhorn uniform and have pretty strong opinions about it. So we decided to do a video, and this was kind of sparked by actually a Crystal Conte tweet from last summer back in July. I'll put it up on screen right now. And I guess I gotta give credit to this particular fan that tweeted this out, to CDC. Hook'em Horns 87TF is his username or her username. He says, "Hey CDC, I think fans are excited to see if uniforms are going to match the field too." So this, I guess, is referring to right after we got the new field with the darker burn orange end zone and new logo in the middle of the field on the 50-yard line. This particular fan proposed, "Hey, are we going to get new uniforms to go along with this?" And of course, CDC follows up with all the manufacturing delays our world experienced this past year because of COVID, we won't have new uniforms for the 21 season, but count on 22. However, we have a few surprises for you this upcoming season. And of course, those surprises so happen to be the change in the helmet. The decal on the helmet went back to the darker burnt orange, the traditional classic look, which honestly is probably one of the biggest and best changes, at least I think both of us agree, you could do to the Texas uniform. That other helmet that had the, I guess, slightly lighter burnt orange look just wasn't a vibe. Didn't look as good, at least compared to the classic one. And but yeah, CDC hinted at new uniforms coming. It should have happened last season, but COVID slowed it down. So really in this video, what we want to do is we want to discuss, well, we're going to first kind of look over what's the current uniform look like, and then discuss what we'd like to see and what we anticipate seeing in this upcoming season with the new uniforms that are coming. So before we start, first off, very long intro. Please, if you're watching this, if you're new here and watching this, please like, comment, subscribe, all the good things, especially to this video. We really want this to be very interactive. So of course, with uniforms come a lot of opinions, so please leave in the comments below some of your thoughts on the uniforms, what we're getting, what we have now, what you'd like to see, what you don't like, what you do like, all that kind of stuff. And then of course I gotta ask Matt Myers to say hello, since he hasn't even gotten the chance to talk yet. Matt, how are you doing? And you were the one that actually proposed this video idea. What kind of gave you the idea to do this?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, what kind of my inspiration was really just, I'm just envisioning Quinn Ewers in a simplified classic Texas uniform. Like I think about that a lot because I'm such a nerd for uniforms, I guess, in college football. So I just kind of want to look forward to what they're going to look like this upcoming season, because we don't really get new uniforms at Texas. We don't do alternates. We've been wearing the same uniforms for years and years and years, my whole life really, besides tiny little tweaks here and there. And I'm sure our new uniforms won't be a big change, but they'll definitely be different. And it's just exciting to look forward to. But first, I want to preface this with, I know Dale Royal would always say that these are work clothes. It doesn't matter what you wear. And like in regards to uniforms, we don't need to be the Oregon Ducks. And I agree with that. These are just uniforms. But I do think that it does matter, especially with recruiting and stuff. You have to have a clean uniform with how these kids are and all the photo shoots and everything. And there's definitely some things in our uniforms right now that are, I like to think of myself as a little OCD, and they kind of just bother me whenever I see, like the sleeves all messed up and the Longhorn in the chest. And we'll get into that. But that's basically kind of the reasonings behind wanting to do this video. And I'm curious whenever we will officially announce and drop the new uniforms, because that'll be a super exciting day.
Yeah, I like it. Well, with that said, we'll kind of get into some of the analysis. So, first, let's break down the current uniform. So, I'm gonna have a few pictures up as we go through this. But yeah, let's start with the helmet. We went back to the darker decal, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I think that this was one of the best moves that we could have made. I think that this, at least to me, might not be noticeable to some fans, but to myself, changing the helmet already made what we had so much better. Going back to that classic look, I think the darker Longhorn logo pops more. It doesn't get distorted in the sunlight or in the stadium lights. It holds up to it. And then it also just kind of gives more of a contrast throughout the whole uniform. That, and it's a classic look. It's what we've seen growing up. It's what we've seen in the history books, you know. So I think that that was a great move, and I'm so excited that they were able to pull this off early before we even changed, you know, the full uniform, which would have been last season if it wasn't for COVID delays and stuff. But Mars, what do you think about the helmet?
Yeah, it's a good sign for things to come. Crystal Conte actually, I think he told me that the plan was to unveil it all together. You know,
Yeah.
the new uniform with the old classic dark burnt orange logo on the helmet. But yeah, I guess the COVID shortages or whatever kind of ruined that plan. But the fact that they still put it out was a good move, and it kind of just shows the urgency, I guess, to get these uniforms looking more like they should and how they used to look. So yeah, it looks way better, way more menacing. Especially on, I think it looks really good on the icy whites. It looks on the road,
Oh yeah.
that dark orange. It looks really clean. And
I remember
yeah,
I remember you saying, because you went to the Arkansas game, and like right out of the gate, first thing you texted us was like, damn, the new helmets, like with the icy whites, like this is how it ought to be. Like you immediately noticed, like, oh, that's a difference, you know?
right, exactly. It just stands out way more. You can see it literally from the nosebleeds. The helmets look better. You can tell from however many feet or yards away you are from the field. It just stands out a lot. It's a lot more strong. So definitely a good move there by CDC and company.
Awesome. Let's now move on to the chest and jersey region. This is where things get a little more controversial. Obviously, right now, uh, not too long ago, I think it was 2018 season, we went to the bigger Texas look, the script Texas on the chest, as well as adding that Longhorn patch in the middle where the neckline is. That one definitely brings a lot of controversy. And then, of course, we got the Nike and conference patches, which got to be on the uniform. You know, you can't really avoid those. But big Texas and Longhorn patch. What do you think about that, Myers? Because I'm split on those.
Right. So I don't like the big Texas. It's like a new font. It's not classic, although I don't really mind the font. I just think it's too big. I think they should definitely shrink Texas on the next uniform or take it out altogether and go more of a throwback look. And then as far as the chest, the Longhorn emblem, I mean, Trevor, we're in agreement. Madrid's in agreement. Everybody's pretty much in agreement. And that's going to be, I think, primarily the biggest thing addressed on these new uniforms is getting rid of that chest Longhorn logo. It's not historic. It makes it look way too busy. It loses its simplicity. It's it used to be a super clean uniform. Now it's kind of cluttered. And then there's also a Big 12 logo in there that we didn't mention. So it just it's way too busy on the chest right now, and I think that they're going to definitely clean that up. What I don't want them to do, which I kind of have a rational fear of, is them taking out the Texas but leaving the Longhorn logo on the chest.
Oh God.
I would vomit. I would vomit because I talked to Del Conte about this, and I think he said that he preferred the throwbacks. Like he was wondering if we should do the throwbacks full time. And I wouldn't really be opposed to that either, but I know a lot of people would freak out not having Texas on the chest.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is really probably the biggest, mystery of how this is gonna how it's gonna be tweaked on the chest, because that's really gonna make or break the uniforms, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, that's an interesting thing because when you look kind of throughout most of college football at most teams, obviously, I think only, at least that comes to mind off the top of my head, only Oklahoma and Kentucky have like names written on their chests like Texas does. Obviously, it's such, kind of a iconic part of what our uniform is that Texas across the chest, and obviously the throwbacks are very um, noticeable and pretty easy to identify just because of especially the burnt orange ones. But with a lot of what you see with a lot of college footballs, they got those logos, those patches on the neckline because they don't have the name across their chest. Like a Georgia, like an Alabama, all those schools really. So yeah, that does kind of concern me a bit. But my assumption would be that um, that Texas would stay just because I think it's a little too iconic to just rip it off. And I think, like you said, I think a lot of people would freak out if Texas went. But we definitely agree that that patch just needs to go. It's a little too crowded. Simplify it down. Every time we talk about this topic, I always love to refer to the Oklahoma uniforms because if you look at those, they have, like us, the name across the chest, like I just said, but they don't have a patch on the neckline because they agree, like us, that it's a simpler, cleaner look. You don't need the logo on top of the other name. Um, it's just, it makes it too crowded, and simpler the better in turn, especially when you got a name that big, especially with the bigger Texas or the bigger Sooners, because theirs got bigger as well. So yeah, definitely something that's of note. Shoulders, we'll transition to that. Numbers currently at the top of the shoulder pads rather than the sides like they used to be traditionally. And then stripes are still on the sides of the uniform. That has been there for a very long time, basically since the royal days. So the stripes, even through all the uniform changes that have happened, have always been consistent. Myers, thoughts on this?
Right. So obviously the numbers on top of the shoulder, I think it's very like unnecessary. No one can really see them, and it just kind of
Yes.
takes up a lot of space. And it's not historic at all. They just moved them there. The only other team that really does that I can think of is Ohio State. But
Mm,
I think we switched to this back in like 2018 or 2017, one of those years. And I just think it's definitely needs to go. Either just get rid of them altogether or move them back to the shoulders, how they were with Vince and Colt and all the other years before that. But honestly, in the perfect world, I say just take them all out and then raise the shoulder straps a little bit higher up the shoulder so they're not uh, getting stuffed under the shoulder pad and getting all wrinkled up. They always look, I mean, the majority of the time, the shoulder stripes look pretty ugly on the field. Every now and then you'll see them where they're just looking clean and just two stripes that are straight and on the shoulder correctly. So I think raising them up would clearly like make them look a lot more clean more often. And I know they're going to get messed up. It's football, but just if I'm nitpicking here in the off season, I think they should definitely raise the shoulder stripes up and get rid of the numbers on top of the shoulder. What about you, Trevor?
yeah. If I had to pick, if I was in charge here, I'd probably opt to move the numbers back to the sides. Um, just because I guess it's a little more cluttered, but I still think it's a really good look. It's probably just because that's kind of what we grew up watching. And really, if you go back to, I mean, they've had the shoulders on, I mean, the numbers on the sides of the sleeves, basically since what, the mid 70s or something like that. So that's very historic. And it wasn't until recently, like you said, that they moved them to the top, where, like you said, you can't really see them. Like a lot of these pictures right here, you literally can't, you wouldn't even notice that the numbers were there, which I guess is okay to be subtle, but at that point you might as well remove them. And then whenever you do look at like some of the classic Texas uniforms from like the 60s and early 70s where they didn't have any numbers at all, I mean, we could go back to that type of look to where you may not need a number at all on the shoulder, because that clean look and having the big, Texas in the middle of the chest. You don't necessarily need a bunch of other details to go along with it. So I'm kind of in agreement. I say either move them to the side or take them off completely, rather than have them where they are now. But at the same time, because you can't see them too much where they are now, if you leave them, that's fine too. So honestly, I'm the least picky about the numbers. But again, if you gave me the choice, I'd say move them. So
Sweet.
we're done with the jersey. We're now going to the pants. Pants are all white. They have been for a while. Mars, you're good with the all white pants?
Yeah, keep them. They look good.
All right. Keep that fast. But we will come back to them because I do have some interesting points about the pants. Socks and cleats. This was kind of a big change this season as well. You kind of saw it starting to phase out. Texas for a while under Tom Herman started rocking the black cleats and black socks with their home uniforms, which both of us really liked initially. And then kind of over last season, and then especially this season, they went away from them completely to the all white socks and all white cleats, which is probably the safest look, universally, and probably the best option. But the all blacks I did like the all blacks, but there were definitely caveats with those. Myers, what do you think about the new changes to the socks and cleats?
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say about the caveats. The all black look okay but when you go with the full long sleeve or long socks, black socks all the way up to the knee, it looks kind of bizarre with the white and then the way black and then the orange on top. So yeah, I think if they did want to keep the black cleats, which I'd be a fan of, just make sure that when they're wearing long socks, that they're white, because the black, it kind of takes away from the rest of the uniform. It kind of just draws your eye to it. So yeah, I don't think that was a good look, but black with shorter socks, definitely a good look.
Oh yeah.
That's what Colt and Vince wore. But yeah, I think like you said, white on white is just the safest, definitely the best for the icy whites. But
oh yeah. And we're not talking about icy whites obviously should be all white when it comes to the socks and shoes, but for the home uniforms, that's where it gets a little bit more room for creativity in that department. So that's the current uniform. Now we're going to kind of transition into, I guess it's basically tackling what we just tackled, but changing it a little bit, where we're talking about things that we want to see. So if we truly have the choice to do this, what do we want changed? Let's start with the helmet. I think we're both in agreement that they made the change that needed to be made. It's perfect. Would you change anything else about the helmet?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I mean, maybe add the Texas flag to the back of the helmet. Some schools have their state flag on the back of their helmets.
Yeah, like Iowa State.
You're right. Yeah, and instead of the American flag or with the American flag, I think Texas is such a renowned state that it would definitely look really good. And we have such an iconic state flag. I think that'd be a good look. But yeah, other than that, I like the simple uniforms. They look great. I mean, the simple helmets with just the darker burnt orange. So I think CDC already nailed it, and he doesn't need to really tweak it at all at this point.
Yeah. Let's move back to the actual jerseys again. We're both in agreement. Removing the Longhorn patch is the biggest and most paramount of all changes that we feel can be done. If that means keeping the Texas on the chest, which hopefully is the case. I guess if they remove the Texas, maybe you could keep the patch. But again, we're entering unexplored territory with that, and changing up the uniforms completely. So that would be interesting if they decided to go that route. But in terms of Texas, if you had to pick the smaller Texas or the bigger Texas, when you look at them side by side, it's really not that big of a difference. It's pretty subtle, actually, but it definitely is a difference. What are you more in favor of?
I prefer the smaller, cleaner look, but it's not, like you said, it's very subtle. It really doesn't make a huge difference as long as you get rid of the Longhorn emblem on the chest. I think it'll look good either way.
Agreed. If I had to opt for one, I would go with the bigger one actually, just because universally, I think it looks good on all players. I'm talking about the big guys too. On this offensive linemen or big defensive linemen, the smaller Texans definitely kind of got lost. But with the bigger one, it holds up to their bigger bodies a little bit more, and it still looks really good on the smaller, fast guys, like the DBs and wide receivers. But like you said, just as long as you remove that patch in the middle, I think is key. And then another thing to think about, kind of an interesting thought, is the with the Texas Longhorns going to the SEC. I mean, the SEC patch is a big patch, and it says a big SEC in it, unlike the Big 12, where it's not, the lettering isn't very pronounced. So I think that I don't know which one would hold up better to the patch, the SEC patch, but my guess is the bigger Texas probably would too. So if I had to pick, I definitely would opt for the bigger one, even though the smaller, I guess, is more traditional. But you heard my reasons. So we'll move on from that. Shoulders. In terms of numbers on sides, I said I'd move them back. You'd say we remove them completely. Stripes, you want to move them up. I'd be open to that too, but if you move them up, I don't think you can move them up and put the numbers on the sides of the shoulders. So you'd kind of be sacrificing one for the other. So I say move them up if you're removing the numbers completely, but if you're moving the numbers back down to the sides, keep the stripes where they are. Going to pants. The white pants are classic and have been around for Texas for a long time. And if we changed the pants, I think people would flip out. But upon like doing my research and looking a bit more at Texas's uniforms through the years, for about a decade, Texas actually had stripes on their pants and striped socks. This was from like the mid 70s to the mid 80s. Basically Fred Akers' tenure. It might be kind of a hot take here, but I kind of like them. I kind of like them. I don't love them, and if I had to pick, I'd probably go with the clean all white pants. But I mean, if you're watching and you were a fan of Texas in that era, or you grew up watching Texas with the striped pants, please comment below, because I want to know the history about like why Texas randomly decided to put stripes on their pants for a decade, and then why they went away from it. Did the fans like the stripes? Did they hate the stripes? Did the players like it? But I mean, when you look at Texas's history, I mean, like you got legends like Earl Campbell, Jerry Gray, McMichael, Kenneth. You got some of Texas's most iconic players ever in those pants. Why? Again, I want to know the history of like why did we have them and why did they go away? But you don't like the stripes based off your body language, Myers, I'm guessing.
I mean, I'd have to see them with our new uniforms or our current uniforms, but
Fair point.
I think those stripes I think of OU when I see those two stripes down the pants. So I don't think we should do that. But hey, I'd be open to at least seeing it. I wouldn't be super opposed to it.
Yeah. Okay. I can get with that. Socks and cleats. Honestly, this is where I think the biggest amount of creativity can come in. Right now, it's white on white. Like I said, safest probably for what we're going with. The black on black look good, but whenever it comes to long black socks, it's not the vibe. Myers, if you had to pick, and I think we're in agreement on something, but if you had, I'll let you start it off. If you had to pick a cleat sock combo to go with the home uniforms, because we agree icy whites should be all white, don't touch those. But home uniforms, what would you go with?
I would definitely go black cleats, white socks, or orange leggings, because that's what we used to wear in the throwbacks. Yes. And it looks so clean. It looks so good. If you go and look at us against Kansas, like in 2015 and other games where we wore throwback home uniforms, I thought it looked so much better with the black cleats and the white socks. But then fashion people will be like, you can never wear black and white with your socks and your shoes. And like, I don't know. I'm not a super big fashion guy, so I don't know if that's like a big sin or anything, but I thought it looked so good, and it's got history behind it. So I would love to see that, but I wouldn't expect it. I think they're going to go white on white, like you were saying. Just keep it safe, keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm a big fan of the throwback cleat and sock look. That's a historic look. I mean, Texas had that. Well, obviously they're in the throwbacks, but it's a historic look, and I think it's a very NFL look. Because when you look at NFL teams, they have those double layer socks that have the white and then like the color of their team and then their shoe. I think it makes long socks not look long. Because right now, especially with the black socks, those socks are super noticeable. But when you got the layering like that, I think it kind of evens it out. And I don't know. It's just a really classy look that you don't see in college and you see in the NFL. So maybe that's a deterrent as to why Texas didn't stick with that long term. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I guess some college purists might say, hey, let's keep the NFL look out of college. But I think because a lot of other teams don't have that look, and Texas could potentially own that look for their home uniforms, I think that has the potential of kind of being continuing to make the uniform even more iconic. But another option that I want to bring up, you said black cleats, white socks. That I mean, Texas has worn that too over the years, especially in the '90s. I don't think that's a bad look. I know a lot of people hate it, but I mean, you look at Alabama, USC, Penn State. I mean, all those schools do the black cleat, white sock. I think it's a very classic football look. Whenever I think of football, I think of that kind of look. Yeah, maybe not in style would you be wearing white socks with black shoes, but in football, that's kind of been a look. So that's it's okay. It's not my favorite, but I could understand someone getting behind that. And the last cleat sock combo that I want to talk about is going back to the Fred Akers era. They wore tube socks, which I guess was like the style at the time, but I kind of like them just because the two stripes on the socks match the two stripes on the sleeves of Texas's uniforms. And I think if you modernized it with like two, thin stripes that kind of match the thin stripes that are on the actual jerseys, I think it could be like a subtle way to kind of tie the uniform all together. And that's still adhering to that white on white look. So you could do it with both the icy whites and the home uniforms. But it's just having those like a modernized tube sock. You don't need to do a thick 80s style tube sock, but like a modern, real kind of thin, intentional look. I think has the potential of tying the whole uniform together. I'd have to see it, of course, before I, make that decision. Because when you look at the those 80s photos with the tube socks, it's also with the striped pants. So I'd have to see it with the plain pants to really be a judge. But again, I think it'd be like super subtle. Like some people might not even notice, but for those that care, and that really look for that stuff, I think it might help with tying the whole uniform together even better. What do you think of that idea?
Dude, I love that idea. I've been thinking about that in my head, but I never really thought that'd be possible. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe CDC watch this video and get some inspiration. At least try it out for one game. It couldn't hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the classic tube sock looks look so good. If you look back at or even some NFL teams wear them now, and it looks so
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that, especially on our home uniforms. I think it would look really good.
Yeah. I like that you like that. I'm kind of surprised. I'm curious what people in the comments will say about it, because obviously tube socks are a very 70s, 80s type look. And if you look back at the history of college football, pretty much all college teams were wearing tube socks at that time. But I think if Texas brought it back, again, kind of like with the throwback sock, I think Texas could kind of have that be a staple of their uniform that you don't see in a lot of other teams right now. So I don't know. That's interesting. So I think we're both in agreement, either throwback socks or tube socks. if we had to pick, but the all white look is probably what they're going to stick with. That'd be my guess. And that's not bad either. So, okay. Then last point that we want to touch on with uniforms before we transition into a slightly different topic to wrap it up, jersey color. Myers, you mentioned this in our notes. You think that should Texas be changing the color of their jerseys because of the fabric issue right now?
Yeah, apparently it's a fabric issue, right? Del Conte and them were
Yes.
saying because the old fabric that we wore in the 2000s and before that, obviously like the Russell uniforms were like they look so dark. They look like almost brown. So yeah, it's definitely a fabric issue. So I don't know. I don't know how you address that, but you have to make the uniforms darker in some way because it stands out on the field, especially if you go back and watch like highlights of us in the 2000s versus highlights of us now, like on sunny days, two games on both sunny days, you can tell. So I would love to see the real burnt orange. That's kind of what we're defined as. I don't like when I'm looking at pictures or highlights of us and we kind of look like we have light orange out there, like Tennessee or Oklahoma State or Syracuse. I feel like that's just kind of it hurts. Like it's our identity is burnt orange, dark orange, and it's such a
Mhm.
unique color that's so recognizable. I think we should definitely go all out to honor that and try to get these uniforms as burnt orange as possible. So yeah, however they get it done, I'm glad I'm not doing that, but I'd love for them to definitely make them as dark as possible. The way how dark they were when Ricky Williams was playing was crazy, and I wouldn't even be opposed to seeing that. Those were really dark, burnt orange, and I love the way those look. So yeah, definitely darken the uniforms.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because Matt Lange a few years ago tweeted out a picture that had the Ricky Williams uniform from his era, not his jersey, but a jersey from his era. One from VY's, no, one from Ricky's, one from Colts, and then one of I think current time. And it's all the same color. Like they haven't changed it. It's like you said, it's a fabric issue. I think it's also just a modern issue. Like stadium lights with the LEDs, I think throw things off a little bit different. Some of the lights that you see in the locker rooms, I think, can throw things off. And then just social media in general, with filters, both, like on Instagram and stuff, but also like professional photographers use filters pretty much all the time these days and touch up photos, and that can alter what it looks like. So I don't know. It's a difficult task. I think if you darken them, you run the risk of not looking like Texas or potentially throwing off the uniform. So if I were in charge, I'd probably say don't touch the don't darken them or anything, just because you run a risk of potentially throwing everything off and then it messes with your brand even more. But I'm kind of the notion that it just kind of is what it is. Because again, like in some photographs, it does look real burnt orange. It's all a matter of lighting situations, and I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the fabric. So I don't know. I don't know what I do with it, but it's definitely a talking point that CDC is well aware of, because this we've seen this on Twitter before. So kind of an interesting topic.
I
And
think I
then
do
last,
remember them real quick. Sorry, Trevor. I
yeah,
think I do remember Del Conte or somebody saying that the reason that the field was like bright orange is because they didn't have like the proper color, for that, how we darkened the
the
end
turf.
zones on
Yeah.
the turf. And then last year, I mean, they got it done. They got real dark burnt orange in the end zones. So hopefully it's the same situation where they figure it out. They get the right fabric mesh or whatever they need, and it's just a shade darker. But yeah, I mean, it's not that huge of a deal. But to us, diehard Longhorn fans, it kind of triggers me a little bit every now and then when I see the bright orange pictures. But I'm sure Del Conte will get it right for us.
Yeah. The interesting thing, and this is because I happened to stumble across a picture when looking for a picture of the current football helmet with the darker Longhorn logo on it. that darker, the color of the dark Longhorn actually now is what they used for the end zone. So that darker burnt orange look is just what they put on the field. Like they match now. So if they use that dark look on the actual uniform, then that contrast isn't there. I guess you could potentially do it and see what it looks like, but I think you run the risk of like straight up having brown jerseys at that point, which I think could look cool, but again, it's not Texas when you. I mean, yeah, it's not following the color code that they've upheld for so long. So I don't know. It's an interesting topic to debate, but
Yeah, Texas definitely takes their burnt orange seriously. Don't we have that color patented? So
yeah, we do.
So I think they'll definitely make a big effort to get it right this time around. So we'll see what they can do.
Yes. Last big talking point. Let me know your thoughts on this, but I'm kind of a big proponent on it. Obviously, Texas doesn't have alternates, but obviously a lot of schools do. And I know that one argument for Texas is, we're, kind of avoiding alternates is because, oh, we're a blue blood, we're a historic program. We shouldn't be messing around with alternates. But I can name, I mean, right off the top of my head, Oklahoma has an alternate. They're a blue blood. Ohio State, every year, I feel like it's a new alternate. Notre Dame has a big history of alternates that have existed for many, many years, well before it was even a, popular thing like it is now. I think you can, I'm not proposing alternates because I think our brand is strong enough to where we shouldn't be throwing in other colors with our color mix or changing things too drastically. But I think what Texas could do, and kind of my proposal, is every year for one game of the season, one home game probably, you wear a throwback uniform. And we've worn throwbacks, especially kind of as of late. It's been like every other season. But I think what you could do is wear those throwbacks that we've worn already, one game a year every year. Or I mean, open up the history book and like look at some of Texas's past uniforms, from like before the 60s. There's many iterations of Texas uniforms that I think a lot of people don't even know about. And there's endless room for creativity to do takes on some of these older uniforms. And I think having an alternate or a throwback game is fun. It's fun for the players. It's fun for some of the younger fans, even some of the older fans that maybe remember, those uniforms from back in the day. They could be like, oh, I remember seeing those uniforms when I was a kid. So I think it's opportunity for, enjoyment all around while not pissing off people too much, because at least it's a throwback and has been a uniform that we've worn in the past. But I think having it yearly, it just makes for, I think it makes for a fun time. Maybe that'd be too much. Maybe people get jaded by that. But like I said, Notre Dame does it every year, and that's as traditional of a school as it comes. And they really embrace the alternates or throwbacks or whatever you want to call them whenever they wear them. So, what do you think about that, Myers?
Yeah, I'm anti alternates for sure. I mean, some blue bloods do it, but let's be honest, OU's alternates look horrible. Their
They
fans
do.
hate them.
I hate them.
Ohio State's blackouts also look stupid. I feel like their uniforms are already perfect. I don't like when they tweak them. Notre Dame does have some good alternates, but yeah, Michigan does alternates every now and then too, and I also dislike them. I feel like their classic looks better. So I'm definitely a fan of just keeping it simple, keeping the brand like Alabama, USC do. But yeah, I'd be a big fan of throwbacks every year, like we've been doing. But I think it's because of like the 50-year anniversary of our 69 and 70 national championships.
It hasn't been consistent in our history. Like I think we've only done throwbacks a handful of times. I remember it was the 1 year for Freddie Steinmark, and then 1 year for the 69 team, 1 year for the 70 team. And then we might have done 1 year for the 63 team. And then I remember VY once wore throwbacks in 2005 to start off the season. So it hasn't been consistent, but yeah, maybe do them every year.
That'd be cool. I'd be a fan.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, that we just talked about uniforms for a long time. So hopefully you're still with us. Please drop in the comments below your thoughts about this video. Do you agree with a lot of the things that we've said? Do you disagree? Are you for alternates? Are you against them? The stripes on the pants, I want to know about that. So please, if you have information about it or opinions about them, let me know. Let me know if I'm crazy about the tube socks, all that stuff. We'd love to hear from you, and it'd be cool. Like you said, it'd be cool if CDC saw this and maybe was like, hey, let me take some of that into account, depending on how the video does. Or, I'm sure he's not going to take, two younger guys like us into account so much as he would some of the prominent boosters. But, and I'm sure the uniform's already made by this point. So I don't know, just kind of fun topic that we wanted to discuss. Myers, you got any final thoughts?
Over under, how many negative comments do you think we're going to get about people saying, 40 minutes talking about uniforms? I'm sorry, guys. We just like this kind of stuff. This is entertaining for us. So
yes,
I hope y'all enjoyed it. But if y'all didn't, hopefully our next video will be a lot better. But it's the off season, so we're going to nitpick uniforms every now and then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, every time we drop a uniform video, I feel like we always get at least one comment where they're like, I'm going to unsubscribe because you guys are ridiculous. But this is clearly a passion of Myers and I. And Madrid's not here, but I know he cares about unis a lot. I feel like if you're a fan of college football, you get into uniforms. So we're probably going to have another uniform video coming down the pipeline too. So just as a heads up. But if you like this video, please give a like and share and all those good things. But definitely comment below your thoughts. And let's kind of use it as an opportunity to chat and share ideas and stuff and go about it from there. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you in the next one. Big things going on in the UT program. So look out for upcoming videos. Welcome.